Well, hello everyone. Welcome to Ironwood's first ever First Friday virtual cooking class. Welcome. Tonight we will be making a lovely spread for you. Cocktail, mocktail, garlic cheese fondue, and chocolate truffles. Our host this evening will be Helena Longini, a couple-year now transplant to the Ironwood area, who has worked for, was a stylist for the Food Network, and many of you may know our Ironwood gourmand and Tyga Farms owner, Darren Kindler. Enjoy the show.
Perfect.
Hi everyone. As Kathy said, I'm Darren Kindler. I'm the owner of Tyga Farm. And I'm going to get started with a cocktail tonight because, you know, when you're cooking, it's always good to poke the shelf out a little bit to have a little cocktail. And then Helena will do a mocktail so that we can continue cooking. So our cocktail tonight is a thimbleberry wine spritzer. And thimbleberries are a raspberry that grows around the Great Lakes here. And what we're going to start with is a little bit of thimbleberry syrup in our glass. And you want to put about a ½ ounce in.
Darren, where do you get this thimbleberry syrup?
You get this thimbleberry syrup at Northwind Co-op.
And it's made locally, right?
It is made over, I think, in Houghton County.
We'll call it local.
That's local. In the UP, that's local. So you're going to add a little bit of that syrup to your wine glass. And then you're going to add a little bit of sparkling wine. I prefer a dry wine because the syrup is going to give you all the sweetness you need. You can use a different wine, but I do like a Prosecco or a nice dry sparkling wine. And this is a fairly simple cocktail. Just really 3 ingredients, 2 ingredients if you don't count the garnish. And we're just going to garnish with a regular raspberry because, you know, we're going to give you 2. And cheers.
Cheers. Prosecco is really the best way to go. Like Darren said, dry is really a lot better because you're going to get a lot of sweetness from the syrup. So, for the mocktail, there's a lot of reasons why people don't put alcohol in drinks, but I am a huge fan of doing fancy drinks with kids. It's just a really fun way to get them involved in what's going on. So again, we'll start with our thimbleberry syrup. Just a little bit, because it is pretty sweet. And then, these are Meyer lemons. I'm just going to do a little bit of a squeeze in each one. Drop the seed, make sure you take the seeds out.
Well, that's just a garnish, isn't it?
It's just a garnish, but you'll probably choke on it. I cut up some strawberries nice in a quarter. So I'm going to put a couple strawberries in. I personally like to do all of my ingredients first, and then I add my liquid. That way you get a nice blend of everything inside the glass. And then our co-op has started carrying these amazing little drinks. This one is the cucumber elderflower. I drank this all summer when I was pregnant. I'm not even joking, it's one of my favorite things. So I'm going to add about a tablespoon per, like such. And then this is just a seltzer water, just a sparkling water. Any of them will really do, but you have so much sweetness that this is going to be your main component within the drink. And kids really love when they get to feel like they're a part of whatever their parents are doing. So this is a fun one to do with your kids. And then, just for fun, we'll put a strawberry on top. And then, instead of ice cubes, we froze a couple of raspberries, and we'll throw a couple raspberries in too. Those cute little raspberries in there.
It looks so healthy.
It's so healthy.
Cheers.
Cheers. I'm gonna go back to the regular cocktail.
All right. So if you're cooking along with us tonight, I know some of you are, if you have questions as we go along, please put them in the chat box and we'll try to answer them towards the end. Okay. Well, we've got our cocktail and our mocktail ready. Now I think it's time we start making our fondue.
Yeah.
So first thing we're going to do, we're going to heat our stove top up. And we're going to add either a cup of wine, which is more the traditional way to make fondue, or our broth. And it can be any type of broth you want.
What broth are you using?
I am using chicken broth for this one, but you can use a vegetable broth or a beef broth or maybe not a fish stock, but the others work well. And then I'm going to add a little bit of about a teaspoon to a tablespoon of lemon juice, and that's going to acidify my broth. If you're using wine, that acidity is already there, and so with this, we're going to bring our broth up to a simmer or wine, depending on what you're using.
Let me clear some space for you.
Oh, thanks. Don't go too far with that sparkling wine. So while your broth is heating up, you're going to grate 6 ounces of both Swiss and Gouda cheese. You can use any cheese that's sort of a semi-hard cheese that's got a lot of fat in it. I use Gruyere or Imitar, which is the Swiss cheese. I think I pronounced it right. Not Swiss.
Sounds good to me.
Yes, but we can use a Swiss cheese or a Gouda. Just make sure it's got a good fat in it, otherwise it could separate and not be very creamy. So add a tablespoon of cornstarch to your cheese and a teaspoon of salt to your cheese. You're going to mix that together, and that's going to help the cheese melt evenly, and cornstarch is going to help thicken and make it a creamier dish. So we're just going to mix that up together.
So I want to interject really fast. When you're looking to make something thicker and you're using cornstarch, it's really good to add the cornstarch to a cold ingredient and then add it to a hot liquid.
Yes.
Otherwise, you just get a powdery water.
Yes. So our cheese here is fairly cold. So you can do a lot of this in advance. So you can have your cheese shredded and already coated in with the cornstarch and salt and waiting in the fridge until it's time to go. And just going to see, starting to heat up a little bit there. While you're also waiting to do that, you can also be preparing the items you're going to dip into it. So we have some carrots, we have some red bell peppers, we have bread, a lot of, those are sort of the traditional ones. We also have some apple slices, and if you're going to do apple slices, you want to create an acidified water bath for them so that they don't brown, because you want, this is a romantic evening, either with a partner or with yourself, and you don't want brown apples to kind of distract from it. So we've added a little bit of lemon juice to our water to keep our apples nice and crisp and white. All right. And as your stock starts to simmer, you're going to start to add your cheese in by the handful and kind of stir it to kind of to start the melting process.
Nice and hot.
Nice and hot. And as one batch melts down, you're going to add that next batch in there. You want to keep whisking to keep that creaminess, because nobody wants lumpy, grainy fondue. Everybody's watching. No pressure at all on Darren here. Just keep stirring it. Because you're adding a cold ingredient here, you're dropping the temperature of your liquid, so it takes a little while for it to warm back up between batches. Don't get excited and dump everything in there, or you're just going to have a solid clump.
I imagine that's pretty hard to whisk.
Well, I'm trying to keep it from spilling over the edge, which I have been known to do.
All good cooks make messes. Don't worry about that. All cooks make lots and lots of messes.
Alright, so we're going to add a little more cheese in now. Alright. Just gonna keep it going.
That's already starting to smell good.
Yes, and we haven't even got to the good parts. But I guess around in the Midwest, cheese is the good parts.
So what are your favorite cheeses to use?
Well, I talked about this before. You know, I like a mix of Swiss and Gruyere, if I can get Gruyere, but that's a very hard cheese to get in this part of the world, so Gouda makes a good substitute for that. And here at the Co-op, they have both Gouda and Swiss for you to use. Add some more cheese here. Starting to get nice and creamy. Our producer has a message for us. Alright. Almost finished here with this. Then as your cheese is almost melted, you're going to add in some nutmeg. I got my nice little handy nutmeg grater. And then you can use regular powdered nutmeg if you don't have a whole nutmeg. But then you're just going to add nutmeg to taste. I like nutmeg, but you know, that is something you need to know with whoever you're sharing this fondue with, what their take on nutmeg is.
And if you don't have a specialty nutmeg grater, any type of microplane grater will work just as well.
Alright. Alright, and as this is thinning out, or melting, we're going to finish up here. Let that melt a little bit. Turn that down a touch. And we have our roasted garlic. If you haven't roasted your garlic before and you're following along, you may want to just leave it out for right now. But I roasted some garlic beforehand. Roasting garlic takes away that sharp bite. It makes garlic kind of creamy, smoky, sweet.
So you're saying you could still kiss your spouse after eating this garlic?
I would say that if your partner does not appreciate garlic breath, you should seriously consider your relationship. So we're just gonna, roasted garlic is very creamy, and so you don't really need to mince it because it's going to dissolve pretty much and become a kind of a paste. And yes, I'm using my fingers because I'm a home cook, not one of those celebrity chefs.
They use their fingers too.
Yes. And so, we're just going to stir that all together. And I'm going to bring this off the heat. Now, if you don't have one of those fancy fondue pots, or one of those that are electric, or one of those chafing dish type fondue pots, you can just use your regular pot like we've got here, and then just place it in a little towel, cozy, like that. Give it a little more stirring. And I think it's time for us to sample. So I'm going to move this out of the way and bring over our board of roasted garlic. And
Hey Darren,
do what?
how long do you roast that garlic?
I roast that garlic until it's nice and creamy and the skins are slightly charred. The recipe is, I think, posted on the Facebook page, so there is a recipe for roasting the garlic.
Do you flip it halfway through?
You can. You don't necessarily need to. There's different ways to roast garlic. So, what do you use to eat your fondue with? So, I've got a nice flat skewer, a nice chopstick. I got it take out. I've got a wooden bamboo skewer, or you can get those fancy little fondue forks that I don't have. Would you like to sample first?
I'm going pepper.
Go pepper. And if it starts to cool down, you can just put it back on the stove top and whisk it until it's smooth and creamy. Well, I'm going to go with one of these apples.
You really can't go wrong with cheese. You
Now-
really can't go wrong.
If you are doing this with somebody special, please make sure that they know that you're going to try to feed them, because you don't want to take a trip to the emergency room by
Stabbing?
right.
We're not stabbing our spouses this Valentine's Day. I know everyone has been in quarantine. We're not stabbing our spouses.
All right.
I'm gonna eat
Now I
one
have
here.
never tried a carrot before, but
I'll be your demo.
you'll be the
The guinea pig.
yes.
Everything's better in cheese.
Everything's better in cheese. All right.
That might be a two-biter.
That might be. Again, also check with your significant other if double dipping is allowed.
Fondue is hot, so I think double dipping is allowed. It's really the cold foods you want to avoid the double dipping with. But this was a really simple recipe. This is the most simple fondue recipe I think I've seen. And be careful, because you will lose your food into the pot,
Yes.
like such.
And this is close to, liquid napalm, so don't stick your finger down there to try to get it out. Like I may have a reaction to do so. All right. I think I'm going to pull this aside and let you get started on yours.
Right.
This burner is still hot, so
That burner is still hot. Sounds like a plan. So one of the really great things about truffles, especially for Valentine's Day, is that it's a really interactive dessert. You can make it however you want. You can make it really savory, you can make it really sweet, you can bring the whole family in and just you make it whatever you want to make. So there's two different ways that you can make truffles. Because I'm working with chips versus chocolate bar that I have cut, I'm actually going to use the double boiler method. So I have hot water in this pan that I've been heating up. I have apples stuck in my teeth. So I use a non-reactive metal bowl. When I pick the bowl up, there's no water on the bottom. You don't want to have direct heat onto the metal because you're going to scorch your milk and you're going to burn it, and then you're going to have this weird nutty burnt flavor to the milk, which is just going to throw everybody off. I have 2/3 a cup of cream. The recipe that I gave anyone who has the cooking kit calls to heat up the cream in its own pot, but again, because I'm using chips, I'm going to go ahead and use the double boiler. If you have the cream in its own container, you're going to scald the cream, which means at a low to medium heat, you're going to heat the cream until you just start to see bubbles around the outside of the pot. Again, milk is very temperamental. Any dairy is super temperamental, and that's one of the reasons why Darren said to go slow with your fondue. You add your dairy gradually. Otherwise, it'll break, it'll separate.
You get that thick skin across the top that's not appetizing to anyone.
It's not appetizing to anybody. So, I'm going to heat my cream in the bowl. When I do this with a chocolate bar, I cut the chocolate bars as fine as I can get them. Sometimes I grate them if I'm trying to rush myself. But I'm going to heat it in the cream. When you have this double boiler method, you have a lot more control over the cream than you would if you were doing it in the pot. If you're doing it in the pot, do not leave it. It will burn the second you walk away. I promise you it happens every single time. So, I'm going to get my water nice and hot. Maybe I'll switch burners since that one's been on.
By the way, our producer is topping us off on our cocktail to make sure that we don't dehydrate.
You know, when you cook, that is the best time to have a glass. Cooking is a
In my blood, I can't help it.
Yep, it's a very social activity, and I appreciate it. Thank you. I do like the mocktail. I just prefer the cocktail.
Is that heavy cream?
This is heavy cream. Some people try to use butter. Some people try to use milk. Heavy cream just gives you a much better consistency when you're working with truffles. So
Can you use a coconut cream?
you could use a coconut cream. One of the things that I like to use if I'm going non-dairy is actually cashew cream. So
Ooh.
a lot of people have really started gearing more towards the nut milks. I know we're not allowed to say milk anymore.
Nut juice?
The nut juice. That sounds awful. I'm so sorry to everyone that's watching.
I'm just going to sit over here and sip my cocktail.
Sounds like a plan. So, I hope everyone is enjoying their first Friday, because we sure are. Once I let the cream heat up, then I will add my chocolate chips. But I've noticed that the cashew creams have a very similar consistency to heavy cream. I'm a dairy nut. We're making fondue. There's dairy all over the place here. So we're just going to roll with that. Now that the cream is starting to heat up, I'm going to add my chips.
And how much chips did you put in?
That would be 8 ounces of chips. And
Alright.
I personally prefer to use a higher percentage of the.
Cacao?
Thank you. It's only been one cocktail, I promise. I like to use something that's 60% or higher. You just get a much more rich flavor, and it's slightly more savory. It's not that semi-sweet. It's not that milk chocolate. If you want that sweetness, that's what all of your toppings are for. You can use any topping in the world: powdered sugar, sprinkles, nuts galore.
And in fact, you're actually kind of making a milk chocolate because you're putting cream and dairy into it. So you're adding your...
In a sense, yes, I am making a milk chocolate.
Yes.
I'm making a cream
A
chocolate.
cream chocolate, which, in my opinion, more fat, it's going to be better than...
Right. It's especially with chocolate, you want a richness. If you want to leave it just as its own and have a more savory, dark chocolate type of feel, that's great. But this is, like I said, one of the reasons why this is a fun dessert is you make it whatever you want. So while those are starting to melt, I just have a real basic spatula that I'm just kind of stirring, making sure I get an even stir. As the chocolate starts to melt, it's going to start sticking a little bit. So at this stage of the game, I'm just stirring with a spatula. Once it gets a little more melted, I'll switch to a whisk just to get the rest of the clumps out. While that is cooking, the 3 toppings that I have is just a basic cocoa powder, coconut chips, and then these are just sliced almonds that I've kind of broken up a little bit with my hands. I'm gonna, once the finished product is done, I'm going to use these toppings to kind of roll in, but you can use powdered sugar, sprinkles, you can use pistachios, any type of these peanuts. You can take a hazelnut, shove that sucker right in the middle. My mom's favorite is candy pecans. You can shove a candy pecan right in the middle of it. It's whatever you really want. It's a fun dessert to make, and everyone can get involved. So we're starting to get a good amount of melting going. And again, because I'm using this double boiler method, I don't have to be as careful as if I was just heating the cream on its own. And if you have an electric stove, I highly recommend doing the double boiler method because you have much more control over the heat. Electric stoves tend to be all or nothing, and you don't get to deal with the flame.
With a double boiler, you can walk away and make yourself another cocktail if you need to.
Oh, and just take a drink.
Yes. And it will be fine.
It will be great.
Right, because you're not going to get any hotter than boiling water. So
Correct.
that's the wonderful thing about the double boiler is, you're not going to have that extreme temperature on the bottom. It's only going to be as hot as boiling water, which is pretty extreme when it splashes on you, but it's not as bad as...
And since we're sitting at a basic elevation, right at sea level, water boils at 212 degrees, so please make sure you're not touching this with your bare hands. 212 degrees is a lot. It is a whole lot. But
unless it's a finished sauna, and that's about what the temperature is.
it's true. But then you go jump in the snow, and it's a whole thing. One of the reasons why I wanted to share truffles with everyone is I'm a huge, I know Darren doesn't like the word foodie, I'm a huge foodie, and one of the things that I am really drawn to when it comes to recipes are recipes that are created out of basic necessity. Recipes that are created by what you have in your kitchen. The story behind truffles in 1895, a chocolatier, Louis Dufonte, was working for some pretty wealthy clients and could not find any of his normal ingredients. He had chocolate, cream, and vanilla extract. Well, at that time it was a vanilla bean. We have the extracts. And that's it. That's all he did. He decided to melt chocolate with some cream, add a little bit of a flavoring, and call it a day. The finished product happened to look very similar to a French truffle, and there we go.
Yes.
That's it.
And you can guess which person here is actually from the Work with the Food Network and which one makes it up as it goes along.
Oh, I absolutely make it up as I go along.
As far as I know, fondue is just somebody who got tired of eating cold cheese and had a bunch of stale bread around.
I don't know if that's true, but we're gonna pretend like it is.
Great.
Okay, so we're starting to get some really nice melting. If you see in the pan, it's ever so slightly starting to stick. When I press the chocolate to the side of the pan, you'll see the little ribbons of chocolate that are sticking. So we just kind of stir it and hang out. Almost looks like chocolate milk. When you're working with a chocolate bar and you cut the chocolate as fine as you can get it, it melts a little bit quicker, but not everybody is super comfortable using knives to cut chocolate. Sometimes it can be a little bit of a pain in the butt. So chocolate chips work just as good as everything else does.
Yeah, because cutting a chocolate bar tends to have this sort of jarring effect, and it can...
Absolutely does. And you will get chocolate all over your house if you're like me and you've got animals everywhere. I don't want my dogs eating chocolate, or my cats, or my baby, for that matter. So, we're really cooking with fire now. Give it some nice stirs.
Next time we'll actually do it all over an open flame.
We will have a bonfire outside, a little tripod over the bonfire. We'll do everything in cast irons.
There we go.
Sounds like there's a second episode.
Second episode coming. Check out First Fridays. Who knows what'll happen.
You want me to stare for a while?
And I do want to shout out to everyone at the Ironwood downtown authority because these First Friday events are going to get amazing. We are doing a lot for the community, and there are so many businesses down here that need our help, especially now in the pandemic. And I'm so happy to be a part of a new community that's stepping up to help everybody out. So shout out to our friends with Travel Ironwood and our beautiful co-op that I'm so happy to be a member of and a board member of. All right, folks, so.
Oh, look at that.
Yeah. You can drink it, but don't, because it's hot.
Yes.
And hot sugar will make you have a skin graft.
Yes.
Unfortunately, I know a couple of people who that have happened to. So, as we're going, I'm going to switch to my whisk, because now I can start getting all of those little lumps out. I brought just a real basic foil pan, any type of a loaf pan, a bowl, anything that's kind of non-reactive.
What does that mean?
Non-reactive. It doesn't react.
But like,
react to acids mostly. It doesn't impart a food flavor.
like if you had a copper bowl or
A copper bowl will react to anything that's acidic, especially vinegar. There are a lot of chefs out there who swear by cooking in copper. You have to be very, very careful because it actually could turn your food toxic. So we went from nothing to everything very quickly. All of our chocolate is melted. We've got all of our lumps out. I'm going to
Call it silky.
Yeah, so when I do this, I can get really nice ribbons of chocolate coming off of my whisk. And I didn't realize until I was a little bit older that most people actually don't hold the whisk correctly.
What?
Depending on if you're whisking a large bowl or a small bowl, hold it like a pencil. It's actually the best way to hold a whisk.
And if you go and look at the recording of this later, you'll probably see that I used it improperly.
It's whatever is the most comfortable, but if you're whisking for a very long period of time, hold it like a pencil because you'll get fatigued very fast. So, we have,
water off. Oh, it's off. There we go.
so we have all of our chocolate and milk has been combined. This bowl is very hot. It's metal. It was over boiling water, so again, 212 degrees. This is about a teaspoon and a half of vanilla extract. I add this at this point because I want to make sure that the chocolate and the cream have combined first, and now I add my flavoring. One really awesome thing that truffles can, one really awesome thing that I do with truffles is I mix up the flavoring. So at Christmas, I use peppermint extract. Maybe in the spring, I'll use an orange extract. Whatever you want. But for Valentine's Day, we're gonna go classic vanilla. All right. So this loaf pan will go into the refrigerator for about 2 hours to cool because you want to set everything. Oh,
You'll use yours, all right.
I have a really great sous chef.
Try that.
Use your spatula, get all of that goodness.
See, I was just actually wanting some leftover chocolate on my spatula. As the grandson of a cake maker, I am a big proponent of having your own spatula to clean the bowls up after. And chocolate, unlike cake batter, is less likely to cause you any health problems.
watch out for the skin grafts.
Exactly.
Skin graft.
So at this point, I switched to, this is called an offset spatula. This is a small offset. I use this just to give myself a real basic spreading tool. Because I want it all in one cohesive shape after it's cooled. So I just kind of spread it around for the sake of time. I'm not going to be too neurotic about it. Any other time though. I'd be here for 10 minutes. Also, a lot of people don't realize that this is actually called a ganache. And you can make what they call a ganache cake. So basic chocolate cake, same exact recipe. This, from the hot stage, goes right over the cake. Cake goes into the refrigerator, and then you have this nice solidified chocolate kind of crunch over the cake. Chocolate ganache cake is one of my favorites. I actually made it a couple of weeks ago for my father-in-law's birthday, and I've been craving it ever since. So
I have a birthday coming.
when's your birthday, Darren?
It's not till October, but we can have half birthdays. I have a half birthday coming up.
I will make you a chocolate cake if you want to. If you make me cocktails, I'll make you a cake.
Deal.
So this is gonna go into the refrigerator for about 2 hours or just overnight. So
Wow!
The magic of TV.
The magic of live TV. This is what your solidified product will look like. I have a couple of different tools that I use. So this is called a melon baller. It gives you 2 different sizes. I use this primarily for watermelons in the summer. Just a fun little tool to make any recipe like that much a little cooler. Melon ballers work. Ice cream scoops work. Spoons work. Whatever you have lying around. So I will run the melon baller through the chocolate, and then usually what I do, this has been sitting out so it's a little warm, forgive me.
So you want to make sure this is well chilled when you're doing this.
Correct. So, when you have a little ball of chocolate, you can roll it between your hands. We practice food safety and washed our hands quite a bit. That's your basic truffle. So this is your ganache. This is going to go into all of the toppings that you'd like. So we'll try, what, cocoa powder first? Let's do cocoa powder first. Oh, where's my little plate? Aha! This is a snowman plate. Technically it's a Christmas plate, but we're just going to go with it.
We have snowmen here until April. So
Happy polar vortex.
Happy polar vortex, everyone! Stay warm. Drink cocktails and make chocolate.
That's why I'm wearing my local hat indoors, because we are in a polar vortex.
Pray for powder.
Pray for powder.
So again, you're just going to roll the chocolate in your hands. Any toppings are great. They make peanut butter powder now. So peanut butter powder is also a really good one if you're looking to make it healthy with some protein.
I don't know, there's a fair amount of protein in cream, right?
Oh,
Or maybe it's just fat.
We need fat up here because polar
Polar
vortex.
vortex. That's why we're having molten cheese and chocolate tonight.
Molten cheese and chocolate. But this is something, I'm a classically trained cook, and baking is honestly one of the most frustrating things for me because I go into these recipes with the best intentions and I want to wow everybody, and they never turn out for me. I don't know if I'm jinxed or what, but truffles are really great because they're kind of foolproof. It's something that you can make however you want. You can do it the night before. You can have your kids help. You can have your spouse help. And it's very interactive, just like fondue is. And you can just sit here with 9 different toppings and fill your heart's content.
And none of them may ever make it to the plate.
And none of them may ever make it to the plate. What topping would you like, my friend?
I don't know. I want all of them. But I think I will try sort of the classic powdered cocoa.
Cocoa powder is the most classic. Again, it's a recipe of necessity, and cocoa powder is what Louis Dufonte had at his beck and call.
Oh yes.
I'm a chocolate fanatic, so chocolate on chocolate with chocolate is probably the greatest thing in the world. You can also make them a whole lot bigger. I'm going small because I want to make a lot of them and fill my belly. Also haven't eaten dinner, so dessert for dinner.
Well, you get a greater amount of topping per.
Absolutely, and I just kind of set up real basic bowls of toppings. You can use a sheet tray similar to this and just kind of have strips of whatever you want. And one of the things I've seen some friends of mine do is they will make the truffles and they'll lay out all the toppings and just let their kids go to town. Whatever you want to make with the truffles, it's foolproof. It's absolutely foolproof.
This is assuming you want your kids at your Valentine's.
This is assuming. Can you tell I'm a new mom? My kid goes with me everywhere except here. That's not true. She just
Yeah.
comes to the co-op
Except
with me
today.
quite often. Just today. She's not with me today. Thanks,
She
Anna.
she is being taken care of.
She's not out in the cold. I'm gonna eat the coconut one.
Oh, look at that.
It is a good idea to wear gloves at this stage of the game, but for the sake of First Friday, we're just gonna go for it.
Yes,
They go great with the cocktail.
they do. I've been over here sipping, and they go over great with the mocktail.
That is true as well. It just looks like there's dirt everywhere, so I apologize.
I think it looks great.
We're gonna do a really big one.
There we go. This is when you share with that special someone. Or not.
The nice thing about the ice cream scoop is that it'll actually get itself out for you instead of using an offset spatula. That's a big chunk of chocolate.
That's the family size truffle.
All right.
That one's mine.
Nope, you called it. You have dibs.
Oh, wow.
And you can use really any type of chocolate. I'm just one of those people, I like to use higher than 60%, because I tend to go sweet with my toppings. But a really rich chocolate goes a long way. It really does. And this is, I think, altogether, aside from cooling for 2 hours, maybe a 15-minute recipe. It's something that you can knock out really fast. You don't have to worry about blind baking a pie crust, or did you get the cake recipe correct? Is it going to be fluffy, or is it going to be a dense brick? It's so easy to do, and it feels fancy. The whole idea about Valentine's Day is being fancy with your spouse, or your partner, or
Yourself.
your family, or yourself, yeah.
Yes.
Or Galentine's, your best friend.
Yes.
And so I am a huge fan of being fancy without being fancy. And dirty when I don't have to be dirty.
And you don't want to spend all the time, playing in the kitchen. You want to, get ready for that rom-com.
Netflix and chilling.
Yep.
It's Valentine's Day. And this recipe, 8 ounces of chocolate, you would be very surprised that 8 ounces of chocolate goes as far as it does. This is a lot of truffles, so it's very easy to cut this recipe in half. I just broke my ice cream scoop, so forgive me.
And you have all the parts there because, again, we don't want to.
Legitimately just broke my ice cream scoop.
I don't want that truffle.
That's right, I got it. I'll eat this one. But when it comes to baking, having a recipe, like not having a recipe, sometimes is really hard. Baking is an exact science, it's a chemistry. And if you don't quite get it right, it's gonna throw the whole thing off. And there's really no way to go wrong with this. Chocolate, some sort of a fat, whether it's a cashew cream, a coconut oil, heavy cream, and then your flavoring, vanilla extract, peppermint, orange, almond is a really good one too. And then toppings. It's a foolproof, makes you feel fancy kind of a dessert. And like I said, it goes great with a cocktail. Or mocktail.
Or mocktail.
Or mocktail.
All right. Well, now I have to up my game here in another week or so.
Well, Valentine's Day is a week and a half away.
I think
A
so.
week away. Sunday.
10 days
A week from Sunday. It's 9 days.
And don't make it 10 days because you're going to be in trouble.
That's true.
Oh.
So now we're going to take questions from people if they're at home cooking along with the kits that Kathy, our amazing co-op manager, has put together for everybody. So if you have any comments, if you have any questions about these recipes, please feel free to go to the comment section and send them to us, and we'll answer them to the best of our abilities. Until then, I'm going to keep making truffles.
And I'm going to keep eating them. And also, we also have the fondue over here to sample, so don't be working too hard that you don't get some
I will
cheese.
never pass up cheese.
So I'm actually going to move your bowl over to mine.
Oh, I got chocolate all over the place.
I'm going to bring the fondue over to the middle. So that we've got...
Ooh. I'm going to make a big one, and I'm going to put a strawberry in the middle of it.
There we go. Stir a little bit here.
So between a meal of drinks and fondue and chocolate, is there a recommended time of savoring, or do you just wolf it and get on with the rom-com?
And get on with the rom-com. I'll answer, and then I'll let you take a crack at it. My grandfather was Belgian, and my grandfather was a huge advocate for taking your time, sitting at the table, and talking. He was also a huge fan of, if you open a bottle of wine, you have to finish that bottle of wine because it'll go bad. So we would sit at the table, even when I was little, I remember we'd sit at the table for hours. I mean, we'd sit there for like 2.5 hours, and we would talk, and we would eat, and we would kind of graze on what was there, and it was the best sense of family I think I've had in my whole life. I mean, I have very, very fond memories of taking my time and eating. It was the most social event of the day. And so I say, take all the time you want. Make it a full event.
Well, and you can nosh on these things while you're watching that rom-com.
That's true.
You know, it's not. You have to.
You might be a little messy in bed, so
We
make
have
sure
a
you're on the
question.
couch.
Yes.
Ooh, who's our question?
Can you freeze extra fondue for later?
I think you're going to wind up with having separation problems, and you don't want that for Valentine's Day.
I would actually disagree with that.
Okay.
I think you would initially have separation issues, but I think if you have a little bit of grated cheese, you can whisk that into the separated fondue, and it will actually bring it all together.
Oh, right.
If you're making a mayonnaise, if you're making anything that's egg-based and it separates, the way to bring it back together is to set that mixture aside, add a couple more yolks, and then you add that broken mixture to it. And I want to say fondue is a similar...
I'm still trying to figure out why you would have leftover cheese.
Yeah, why would you have leftover cheese? Come on.
Hey, Darren, how long would you take to enjoy such a meal?
I'm kind of along with her. While I am a fast eater, I do like, the fact that these are communal foods, especially the fondue, and it's something that you're going to be sitting around with that person special or a couple of people, and enjoying conversation while enjoying your cocktails or your wine or your beer, and just nibble as long as you can keep it warm or keep them cold, and just snack along. I mean, because really we're not as much trying to deal with hunger as much as we're trying to bond over food.
Spend time with one another. That's what mealtime should be. It should not be a sit down, wolf it down, get up and go. It's social. You're spending time with your significant other, your family, your friends, or yourself. Sit down and enjoy your own company for a while.
I take several hours to finish that whole pint of ice cream.
Another
Sitting by
question.
myself.
Question.
Who is our other
Okay.
question?
So,
What is it?
how about that lemon tip, Darren? You had them in lemon, the apples and lemon to keep them fresh from getting brown. Does that work for a good packed lunch?
Once they've been acidified, And then you can, by the way, you can use the same thing to keep avocados going
Yep.
brown. If you just squeeze a little lime over a cut avocado, it will not oxidize because brown means oxidation. And so what you're doing is when you're using that acid, you're actually cooking that outer layer with the acid, and that's preventing oxygen from turning things brown. So yes, you could drain these apple slices, put them in a nice airtight container, and take them for lunch, and they should not brown, or at least not badly.
How about, oh, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
How easy is it to scorch the milk?
Very.
If you blink, it's scorched. They say don't watch a what is it? Don't watch a boiling pot. Wow, I just butchered that.
Watch pot never boils.
A watch pot never boils. I've had a lot on my mind today. It's been a long week. A watch pot never boils. The second you turn your back on a pot of milk, it's gonna scorch.
Right, and you don't want it to boil actually. So
Correct.
180 degrees, I think, is
180 degrees is what you'll get for a scald, a good scald. And again, that is, when you look at the pot, it is just ever so slight bubbles just around the edges. And even then you might scorch it. Electric stoves are temperamental, and that's why I always recommend the double boiler method. It just gives you a little bit more room to play.
And if you're not sure about those little bubbles, they do have candy thermometers that will read 180 degrees.
Yes.
That you can have in your pot, and you can watch it. You can watch that thermometer and see if it never reaches 180 degrees.
Correct. But it'll happen in the blink of an eye, I promise.
Because you scald milk to make yogurt and other coagulated,
Creme fraiche,
and so you
sour cream.
Done.
yeah. So the 180 degrees is pretty universal for scalding milk for different products.
Correct. Creme anglaise for an ice cream base. That candy thermometer, you can get them on Amazon for $6-7. You can get them at Walmart for $6-7, and they will save you a lot of swear words and time.
What I do though is because we are right at that elevation where there is a little bit of a temperature difference, I would actually test it with boiling water and deduct a degree or two. Because we are, and so use boiling water as your gauge to see what it actually boils at here. Because we're over 1,000 feet here, and that just changed your boiling temperature.
When I lived in Boulder, at 7,500 feet, water boils at 202 degrees. At elevation, right at sea level, you're looking at 212 degrees. So the higher you go, the lower your boiling temperature is going to be because there's not as much oxygen.
So that's important to do when you're doing anything with a thermometer, is to make sure you know your elevation.
Oh, when's the next cooking show?
To be determined.
To be determined.
If everyone enjoys these shows, I bet we could maybe make a trend of this. There are a lot of really awesome things that Darren grows on his farm. There are a lot of really awesome things that the co-op has started carrying that we could make all sorts of cooking shows.
Yes.
At this point, when it comes out, you just break it and roll it. So you don't continue to break equipment like yours truly. I can't believe I broke that. Look at that.
Wow. You didn't.
I bent the metal.
You popped it right out of the socket. That's impressive. I break a lot of tools, and I can appreciate artistry.
Thanks, dear.
Any other final thoughts?
Thanks for tuning in.
I think the most important thing that I can say, aside from thanks for tuning in, is that cooking in Valentine's should be about bonding. It should be about putting everything aside, turn off the TV, turn off your phones unless you're using them to make cooking videos. Turn everything off, just spend time with your loved ones or your best friends or yourself or your dogs or your cats. Just be with each other, cooking is one of the best things that you can do with someone. It's really fun to cook with people. It's a very social thing. And when you pair it with Valentine's and very interactive recipes, it's fun. And 3 hours are just gonna blink by, and you're gonna look back and go, oh man, remember that time we made fondue and truffles and all those fun things?
I think you're saying be in the moment.
Be in the moment.
Be in the moment.
Yeah.
And
Chocolate.
we want to thank the co-op, Travel Ironwood, Effie, Live, Dita,
Downtown Ironwood Development Authority.
thank you, for hosting this, and Tega Farm, shameless plug.
Who has the most amazing garlic in the world.
Woo! Woohoo!
We love our garlic.
Right.
Like I said before, if your partner doesn't like garlic, maybe look further.
It's time to reassess
Yes.
that situation.
Yes. But thank you.
Absolutely. We've had a lot of fun, so thanks for watching, everybody.